Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, this is a very dangerous development that's unfolding right now with significant geopolitical power implications. It may seem like a minor event, but it is not. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about this news story right here. We've mentioned this over the past month, really. This is from CNBC on Friday. It says, shipping giant Maersk to divert vessels away from the Red Sea, quote, for the foreseeable future. And it's not just Maersk. Hapag-Lloyd has also made that statement. So together, combined, those two companies are responsible for 25% of global shipping. And they've basically said the Red Sea is off limits. And we've talked about why in the past we have Houthi rebels in Yemen attacking ships. They claim it's because these ships are connected to Israel. Any ship connected to Israel is fair game, and they're firing missiles at ships. They're attacking ships with armed boats with people on board. They're attacking ships with boat drones as well as aerial drones. So we're seeing just an all-out attack by these Houthi rebels on shipping in the Red Sea, and it has caused an enormous amount of turmoil in international shipping as insurance costs have skyrocketed, and a lot of these companies are unwilling to go into the Red Sea, put their crews at risk, and so they're having to divert around the Cape of Good Hope off the southern tip of Africa, which adds days to this voyage. Now, then we have today this story in Zero Hedge. It says shipping giant halts container ships to Israel. So we read that Bloomberg reports that Chinese state-owned shipping giant COSCO suspended all container ship transits through the Red Sea to Israel in order to avoid being attacked. So we're seeing companies, if you will, give in to this blackmail, if that's what you want to call it. The Houthi objective is being accomplished. And this is in spite of U.S. attempts to stop it. So let's see, what does this look like right now? This contains a map in this article. Here's a larger area of it. So these little blue marks are shipping, and we see how all the shipping traffic is being diverted around the Cape of Good Hope. And then we see the Red Sea right here, essentially empty. And as of this morning, there are reportedly 0 ships with a destination of Europe or North America in the Red Sea. Now there is oil. A lot of oil ships are still passing freely through the Red Sea. It's container ships that are the focus of the Houthi rebels. And we need to keep in mind, these Houthi rebels, they aren't just acting alone and holding the world hostage. They are directly controlled by Iran. And as we know, as of January 1st, Iran is an official member of BRICS and the BRICS coalition, which is directly aligned against the U.S. coalition that includes Canada, so North America, and Western Europe. So 0 ships are traversing the Red Sea with a destination of Europe or North America. Yet we're seeing Chinese ships, Russian ships, ships with BRICS-aligned nations and BRICS-aligned interest freely passing through. Notice the Chinese container ships that well, we're going to avoid the Red Sea and destinations to Israel, right? But not all together. They're still allowed to pass through. So what are the implications of this? Well, first off, there's enormous economic and global trade implications as a result of this. This voyage here around the tip of Africa versus through the Red Sea adds anywhere from 10 to 28 days to the voyage, depending on where you're going. It's estimated about 500,000 barrels per oil per day more is necessary for ships to travel that route. So that impacts global demand directly, even though we're talking about over 100 million barrels of oil a day that is consumed by the world. Prices are set at the margin, so you can't just immediately add 500,000 barrels of production capacity to the world and with the flip of a switch. That takes time to do. It takes effort to do. It's going to come at great cost. So that's going to put pressure on oil prices upward in and of itself in a vacuum. But we've talked about it. We're in a global depression. We may still see those oil prices go down. So we're adding that. We're adding cost to insurance, cost for fuel, cost for crew. And then think of the logistical consequences of this. Okay, if you're adding 10 to 28 days of shipping time to each of these ships, well, that ship was supposed to be somewhere else, but 10 days later, it's still on that same voyage. It would probably have taken another voyage within that 10 to 28 days. So then you end up with a shortage of ships. It's a logistical nightmare. You're going to have a supply chain snarl as there's delays in products getting to their destination, which are then used to create new products. So we saw with the pandemic shutdowns the impact on the global supply chain and this just-in-time delivery system and how it messed up everything when we had these shutdowns. This is just another instance of where we are impacting that supply chain by having this happen. So no doubt about it, guys, there are economic implications to this. We very well may see shortages of certain products. Certain products may just disappear from the shelves because if some of these items are perishable items, food items, they may not be able to survive that lengthy trip, and so they just won't be shipped to begin with, which means they won't arrive at the destination they have in the past. So there's all sorts of economic implications to this, but there's much, much bigger implications to what's going on. So if you remember, we talked about this at the end of last year, but the United States led something called Operation Prosperity Guardian, where the U.S. Navy has sent ships into the Red Sea, along with 20 other nations aligned with the United States, and their attempts to guard the waterways of the Red Sea for safe passage. It started on December 18th. We had some nations say, such as Australia, say, we support you, but we're not sending any ships over there. So what sort of message does that send to the world? And why would you not know that as the United States before you announce all of this? Why would you? That just sends a signal of weakness to the world. But here we have, this was put in place on the 18th. So we're looking at 3 weeks later as of today, and we still have problems. We had just a few days ago, a missile strike a container ship coming through the Red Sea. We've had attacks by boats, had attacks by drones. Now there's talk of Somali pirates being emboldened in this area right here and attacking ships, which we've heard about for years and years. But now that's becoming a worse problem. But again, this is becoming a problem for really the United States and its allies, because many reports are that ships aligned with China, Russia, and the BRICS nations aren't having the problems to the degree that we're seeing with ships aligned with the Western powers. So here we have 3 weeks that have gone by, and the United States has not managed to put an end to these attacks. And guys, this is a big, big deal in my opinion, because really, what's the reason for the existence of the U.S. Navy? Yes, it's to defend the United States of America, but more broadly, it's to defend United States interests, and it's to defend the free flow of trade and freely navigable water, global waterways, international waterways, such as the Red Sea, if the United States is not doing that, well, then that's a big problem, because we've talked in the past about the United States it dominates the global financial system. One of the reasons that it does that is because it has a very large navy that is all over the globe and defends the waterways and opens them up, makes sure that they're freely navigable for free trade among nations. And so as part of that, other nations say, yes, this is good. We're going to use the dollar. We're going to look to the United States to make sure that these waterways are open. We saw this happen prior to the United States doing this. Who did this? Well, the British Empire did this. So in the 19th century, it was the British Navy that dominated the globe, was all over the globe, and opened up international waterways and made them free for trade, or at least free for the British Empire and its allies. Following World War I and the collapse of that 19th century British Empire, the United States emerged and effectively took over this role, especially following World War II. It was the United States Navy that became the dominant naval power in the world and opened up these shipping lanes to trade, made sure that there was safe passage through many of these trade routes. And as a result, they took over that role, and essentially you have this United States empire that dominates the global financial system, with the US dollar being the world's reserve currency. And we've talked in the past about, well, the United States has the ability to essentially print oil because all oil is traded in dollars. We had this petrodollar system. And of course, the US dollar is the backbone of international trade. It's used all over the place. And as a result of that, and this ability of the United States to print dollars to obtain oil, print dollars to obtain other commodities or finished products, the United States is able to have the largest military in the world. They spend more on its military than any other nation and project military power all over the globe. And we stated the Achilles heel of the United States and its military power is this financial system. And if enemies could take out this financial system, they could take out the dollar. If they could take out the US-based financial system, then they also take out the US ability to project power. Well, now we're seeing that turned on its head in the Red Sea, where, well, what happens if the US either can't project its power or won't project its power? And it really doesn't matter which one it is because the result is the same. Then it loses its global power. And we'll talk about that more extensively as we go through this video, but I want you to think about that because there's one of two things going on right now. Either the United States here in the Red Sea is making a conscious choice not to do to the Houthis what needs to be done in order to free the Red Sea for shipping lanes, or the United States is incapable of doing that because it simply lacks the ability to do that. I would tend toward believing that it's a lack of willingness rather than a lack of ability, but there is a developing lack of ability when we look at Yemen. What we're seeing with Yemen and what we're seeing in conflicts all over the world is the deployment of low-cost drones against conventional weapons is showing there is a technology mismatch there, and these low-cost drones are able to and sometimes get the better of these conventional technologies. And so in the case of the United States defending the Red Sea, oftentimes we see they're using $1 to $4 million missiles to shoot down $2,000 to $100,000 drones. And logistically, you can't do that forever until you go bankrupt. So there is a developing, technology gap. Let's say the United States militarily has lost its technological advantage that it had in the past. Particularly when we look at following the Gulf War in 1991, it was very clear to the world the United States had an enormous technological advantage militarily that other nations couldn't compete with. Well, that gap has been closed. And so that's why we hear about the United States talking about the replicator initiative and wanting to field hundreds of airborne, seaborne, landborne drones simultaneously, because they know that's where the future of warfare is. It's moving away from the conventional weapons, the conventional naval vessels that we would put in place to defend places like the Red Sea. So we're seeing that change. But right now, this week, the United States could use its overwhelming conventional firepower to take out the Houthis. But we know right now the Secretary of State is in the Middle East, and we've read numerous stories in the media. Yes, we have to read those with skepticism, but I tend to believe they're true, that the Biden administration is pushing Israel, do not attack Hezbollah, do not open up a northern front in Israel. We don't want an expanded war in the Middle East. And I think that the United States is thinking, if we just outright destroy the Houthis, which are really an arm of Iran, does this lead to greater conflict in the Middle East, an expanded war, particularly in an election year, but also maybe an expanded war that we're not sure what happens after that or how bad it gets. So we want to try to avoid that. And they may succeed in avoiding that in the short term, but in the long term, they may lose the whole war by failing to defend this vital waterway. Because, guys, what we are seeing is we've seen the emergence of the BRICS alliance. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We saw them add additional members as of the first of this year. Many other nations want to join as well. That alliance is set up basically in opposition against the United States and its Western allies, Western Europe, Canada, Australia, South Korea, Japan. And so we're seeing this bifurcation of global power away from the dominant power system controlled by the United States to this dual power system that would be BRICS and its allies and the United States and its allies. And what we see is, we see some of those newer nations like Egypt controls the Suez Canal. All of these ships coming around here might stop in port in South Africa, a BRICS nation. And we see Iran, which controls the Houthis in Yemen, is a BRICS nation. And Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, a number of these BRICS nations are major, significant suppliers of oil and energy to the entire world. So we see the BRICS coalition taking greater control of the mechanisms of global trade and global energy. And when they do that, that equates to global power. And if the United States is either unable or unwilling to use the power it has to open up this waterway, think about if you're one of these nations that's sort of in between, and you think, well, it's vital for our nation to send ships through the Red Sea or receive ships through the Red Sea. Which side is most likely to make that able for our nation to happen? Do I go to the United States so that I make sure that happens? Or am I better off joining the BRICS coalition to make sure that that happens? right now, if you're one of those nations, you're looking at this and saying, why would I not want to be in BRICS? That seems to be the winning team right now. I want to be able to send my ship through the Red Sea. I want to be able to receive my ship through the Red Sea. I want to be able to purchase oil using my own local currency. So we're seeing the United States wane in power significantly. Guys, this is a major step if the United States doesn't do anything here. And this is why I say this is a very dangerous development, because the United States may very well recognize this, and we may see a major escalation of war as a result of this. But if we do not, well, then it's akin to blood in the water for the sharks, because this is a global power struggle right now between BRICS and its allies, the United States and its allies. And if they see that this can be done, again, I would say, well, why wouldn't Iran say, you know what, why don't we do the same thing over here in the Persian Gulf? And we'll do the same thing with global energy. We'll cut that off and we'll control that trade route. We'll control the free flow of oil to the world. That'll give us an enormous amount of power. And again, some side might make a miscalculation of what the other would or wouldn't do, thinking they won't go to war over that, and then they do. This could erupt very quickly as a result of really, I think it's weakness on the part of the United States, regardless of what anybody's political leanings are. It's hard to imagine this happening post-World War II until the very recent past. That this would be the United States would sit by and allow this to happen. And again, the nations of the world are watching, and they're going to be taking sides in all of this. So where does this all lead? Why does this connect to Bible prophecy? Well, we've talked in the past about the United States is not mentioned in end times Bible prophecy. It's not a significant player in those developments. So as a result, it stands to reason that you would expect the United States dominance of the global financial system, United States military dominance to go away, the superpower status of the United States to disappear. There's many reasons that could happen and probably will happen. But we're seeing one of those right here in this instance, in this failure to defend the Red Sea and make it free and open for international trade. But I would believe that when we see the rapture of the church, that will be essentially the final nail in the coffin of United States superpower status. But that doesn't mean there aren't a number of events that have led up to the present day and that will take place between now and the rapture of the church that would weaken the United States further. And guys, I think this is a big, big deal. I don't understand. Well, I do understand. I want to say, I don't understand why this isn't the number one news story all over the media right now until this is resolved. But I live in the United States, and they don't want this story to be the number one story all across the media, and therefore it's not. But here, we control what we talk about. And so to me, this is number one story. I want to draw it to everybody's attention, a big special alert, because this makes things more volatile in the Middle East. It makes things more volatile globally. Because again, we're seeing the technological advantage of the United States military begin to shrink, if not outright disappear. And that creates its own dangers. But when we see, again, really the purpose, outside of defending the United States itself, of the U.S. Navy, is to make sure that these trade routes, these seaborne trade routes, are free of obstructions so that global trade can take place. And right now, the U.S. Navy is failing in that mission, whether it's because they are unable to do so or because the current administration is unwilling to do so, it doesn't really matter. The result is the same. The world sees an empty Red Sea. And what are the implications of that as we look at the growth of BRICS and the power and prestige of the BRICS alliance versus the waning power of the United States? Again, what does this mean to the global U.S.-dominated financial system? U.S. debt is held by financial institutions and nations all around the world under the assumption that they're going to be doing this, that they're going to be defending these trade routes, that they will defend the free flow of oil at market prices, that they will defend the free flow of trade through waterways, international waterways. That's not happening. So to me, that's an indication we're seeing the waning last days of U.S. superpower status. And guys, that's what we would expect to see given the days that we live in. We see all these signs Jesus and the prophets said to look for that indicate the tribulation period is drawing near. The second coming of Jesus Christ at the end of that 7-year tribulation period. That means the rapture of the church is before that period. We would expect leading up to that 7-year tribulation, the United States has not mentioned that its current power status would diminish significantly. That's what we're seeing right now, right before our eyes. We saw, this has been going on for years. We've seen the pullout of Afghanistan, the abandonment of all U.S. allies. That caused Saudi Arabia to sign a defense pact with Russia that same month because they saw, we had this petrodollar deal with the United States, but if they'll abandon Afghanistan, then they might abandon us as well. Let's turn to somebody else. Who else can we turn to? Well, we can turn to Russia. And so now we see Saudi Arabia in BRICS. We see these OPEC nations openly discussing trading oil for things other than dollars. We had the UAE say that they would not accept dollars. They would accept all the other currencies. So we're seeing U.S. power waning significantly. The end for U.S. superpower status may be much closer than many people think. And again, we could see, as a result of all of this, an eruption of war at any time. That doesn't mean that we will see it, but I believe the probability of an escalated conflict in the Middle East is much higher now than it was, say, even a month ago, which was significantly higher than it was before October 7th. So guys, these are dangerous times we're living in right now. But again, don't let any of this bring you down. This should give you hope if you're focused on the right thing. If you're focused on everything that's going on in the world, well, we should be paying attention to that, but it shouldn't be the entirety of our focus. Our eyes should be fixed on Jesus and his coming, because guys, Jesus is coming back. And so all of this is just an indication that we're getting closer to that time, and that should fill you with hope if you know Jesus. And if you do not know Jesus, hopefully this will open your eyes a bit. I invite you to come to Jesus, invite him into your life. We're all sinners, but Jesus went to the cross. He shed his blood on the cross. He died, and then he rose again, all to pay atonement for our sins so that we could have everlasting life. So if you don't know Jesus, invite him into your life, and he will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding so that you can navigate these tumultuous times. Because guys, that is what is coming. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. God willing, I will see you on Wednesday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.